There seem to be two theories regarding the huge depletion of Edward and Lily Smith's wealth and the corresponding decline of their physical and mental health. Just watch our videos and decide which theory you believe. Theory 1 from the authorities. Edward and Lily Smith, both of sound mind, willingly and knowingly allowed daughter Susan Smith to take as much money as she wanted in cash. That despite her previous drug addiction and criminal record, she had managed to turn her life around. In fact, she was a very good daughter, sole carer, and lasting power of attorney to her parents, but struggled to cope with her responsibilities as a carer. Eventually, Edward collapsed at home and was admitted to hospital due to underlying health issues. Lily was then taken into respite care to give Susan a much-needed break. Theory 2 from the family. Edward and Lily Smith, both not of sound mind, were defrauded of all their money in cash by daughter Susan Smith for financial gain and to fund her drug addiction. That she abused her position as daughter, sole carer and lasting power of attorney, and coerced, controlled and even neglected her parents, who were kept isolated from friends and family. As the situation progressed, both Edward and Lily's physical and mental health worsened. Susan's addiction also worsened as she took more of their money to spend on drugs, causing her parents to suffer increasing neglect. This vicious circle continued until Edward eventually collapsed, suffering from malnutrition and dehydration. When he was admitted to hospital, unconscious and unresponsive, authorities were forced to act, and Lily was placed into care for safeguarding. Most of what we have seen and heard from authorities, especially Worcestershire County Council Social Services, is so convoluted it is unintelligible. It all seems to have been made up on the hoof, with no proper and thorough gathering of important facts. There has been much talk of professional opinions, but surely the validity of such opinions depends on the honesty, integrity and competence of the professionals in question. Ultimately, they have failed to properly explain why, despite repeated warnings, they left a frail, vulnerable couple in their 80s and suffering with dementia, with their health, care and welfare fully entrusted to a person with a history of psychosis, drug addiction and criminality. Why they left this person to take all of their money, tens of thousands of pounds, leaving them with no food in their fridge and not even allowed to put the heating on. Why they left Edward to die of malnutrition and dehydration, whilst the person they entrusted with his care was left to systematically drain cash from his bank account. So, there are several problems with Theory 1, and the investigations conducted by Worcestershire County Council Social Services and the Office of the Public Guardian. Here are some of the questions authorities seem either unable or unwilling to answer. 1. If Edward and Lily Smith wanted to give all of their money to Susan Smith, A. Why did they choose to let her have it all in cash? Why not buy her a car, jewellery or furniture for her home? B. Why wasn't it mentioned in Edward's will? Instead, his will clearly states everything should be divided into 4 equal parts. 1 part to each of his 3 children and 1 part to his 3 grandchildren. It does not state everything should be given to Susan. So, if Edward and Lily had suddenly decided to give their money away, why didn't they give any to their other children or their grandchildren? C. Why didn't they mention it to anyone in the family? Neither Edward nor Lily mentioned it in any of the telephone conversations we have. Neither did they mention it during conversations with other family members. If anything, they seem to be saying the opposite, that with the increased cost of living, they could not afford to give any money away. In any case, from the evidence we have, Edward and Lily were not giving Susan their money. She was simply taking it using their debit cards. Susan visited multiple cash points, sometimes several times a day, with not a single receipt to be found, and not a shred of evidence to suggest, especially suffering with dementia, Edward and Lily really understood how much money was being taken. 2. If Susan was behaving properly as lasting power of attorney for the property and financial affairs of Edward and Lily, why did the Court of Protection decide to remove her? Ironically, this decision was actually based on evidence provided by Worcestershire County Council Social Services themselves. Here is the court order. Highlighted in pink, the public guardian served the application and evidence upon the respondent, Susan Smith, who has failed to file a response. Worcestershire County Council have filed evidence. Next page. Upon considering the application and evidence filed, and the court being satisfied that the respondent has been or is behaving in a way that contravenes their authority. During Worcestershire County Council's second safeguarding inquiry, their investigating officer told us, "I am 100% certain Susan has pilfered about £63,000 from Edward and Lily's bank accounts." Furthermore, in Worcestershire County Council's final report, one of their social workers stated that it was her professional opinion that this was both theft and financial abuse. We think Worcestershire County Council Social Services, the Office of the Public Guardian, the Court of Protection, Lloyds Bank and even the Department for Work and Pensions know very well what Susan has done and are all perfectly aware of the heinous nature of her crimes. Yet none of them seem willing to take any further action or work together effectively to report this matter properly to police detectives. Why has there still been no proper investigation by West Mercia Police? Why is Susan free to do the same thing to other elderly, vulnerable people in Worcestershire? 3. Neither Worcestershire County Council Social Services nor the Office of the Public Guardian seem to have considered or investigated the likely coercion and control of Edward and Lily by Susan, who seemed to be abusing her position as daughter, sole carer and lasting power of attorney, despite having evidence suggesting this was indeed the case. Authorities only mentioned coercion and control once, when, without any evidence or justification, they began a mystifying character assassination on Beverley's partner Ian, who had merely been helping as a friend of the family. Perhaps this is why they now appear to be holding some sort of weird grudge against him. In Worcestershire County Council's final report, one of their social workers stated that Ian had sent some offensive emails. Well, if this was true, this social worker should have reported it to the police. The UK has some very robust laws regarding malicious communications. The rest is just rambling nonsense and is really quite laughable and seems to highlight the dangers of watching too much junk TV. But it is distracting from the real issue, the abuse and neglect of Edward and Lily Smith. Ironically, Ian is mentioned as being coercive and controlling. Not Susan the abuser, but Ian, one of the whistleblowers. Remarkably, this has been written and published by professionals employed by Worcestershire County Council. Authorities failed to take into account Edward and Lily were probably scared and intimidated, as most victims of abuse are, by Susan. After all, they were a frail, vulnerable couple in their 80s and suffering with dementia, and Susan had a history of psychosis, drug addiction and criminality. Here are just a few of the concerning telephone conversations Beverley had with her sister and her parents.
Can I speak to her, please?
I don't know. Do you want to speak to Beverly, Mum? No, she don't want to speak to you, Beverly.
Why don't you want to speak
Your brother has stolen that much out of Mum's life.
What?
Oh, I don't know.
Tell me.
I can't.
Why? Just tell me, Mum.
No, we'll phone me before comes back.
Is coming today, is she?
Yeah, she's coming back.
You ain't going to go in a home, so get that out of your head.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Don't worry about it.
What?
Wants to put Mum into care.
But where's Mum now?
Forget it now. Forget it now. Don't know me, okay?
Alright then.
But don't phone me back till I phone you.
Oh, alright then, Dad.
Worcestershire County Council Social Services do not seem to have considered or investigated asset deprivation. Susan may have persuaded Edward to let her take large amounts of cash from their bank accounts so as to avoid having to pay care home fees, but always with the intention of taking all the cash for herself whenever the opportunity presented itself. This asset deprivation seems to have been carried out at the rate of £3,163 per month. This is far too excessive to be classified as reasonable gifting. We think tax-free gifting allowances are currently set at around £3,000 per year. So how could Worcestershire County Council Social Services possibly think it reasonable for Edward to gift his daughter more than £3,000 per month? 5. Finally, no explanation has ever been given by authorities regarding the money Susan has taken whilst Edward and Lily were in a dementia care home. We estimate this could amount to nearly £19,000, including nearly £17,000 in state pensions and benefits, whilst in the care of the state. Money that should have been going towards their care. How could Edward and Lily have possibly given this money to Susan? It is also important to mention another troubling belief authorities seem to have, especially Worcestershire County Council Social Services, that Edward and Lily did not want to involve the police. How convenient for them. A woman does not want to tell them she has been raped, and a boy does not want to tell them he has been beaten. This kind of thing is common with victims of abuse, and they know full well they should not be using it as an excuse not to investigate the matter, especially when many other people have been reporting the same serious concerns to them. Just look at the case of poor Alfie Steele, who was killed on Edward and Lily's estate back in 21. Sadly, it appears they have learned absolutely nothing from that case. Incredibly, when Worcestershire County Council used this excuse with Lily Smith, they also stated she lacked mental capacity. In Worcestershire County Council's final report, one of their social workers stated, she asked about informing the police, but Lily was clear. She did not want their involvement and stated, I will deal with Susan. Then she went on to state she had completed mental capacity assessments and deemed Lily to lack capacity. How then could this social worker possibly think Lily had the capacity to deal with Susan or to decide whether or not to involve the police? How could Worcestershire County Council Social Services make these kinds of decisions, especially when you consider Lily was also a likely victim of abuse? Throughout all of this, we have found authorities to be in a permanent state of utter confusion. Perhaps it might be a good idea to conduct mental capacity assessments on some of the professionals involved with this case. It really is astonishing and actually quite frightening when you look at the abuse of Edward and Lily Smith and how authorities appear to have turned a blind eye to it, especially when you look at the big picture and consider all of the facts together. Family, friends and neighbours had all reported their concerns to authorities. They had financial information telling them Susan was taking large amounts of cash, medical information telling them Edward and Lily were suffering with dementia, and they knew Susan, their sole carer, had a history of psychosis, drug addiction and criminality. Yet they have all done next to nothing, seemingly content with allowing crime in Worcestershire to be funded in this way. Do authorities here fail to recognise abuse, or do they simply choose to ignore it? Perhaps, considering the current economic climate, they now consider this to be the best and most cost-effective option.